It might be the world's like that was a 45-minute Windows update, unexpected Windows update that causes a significant delay. I've never had a Windows update take like 45 minutes. I'm so sorry, guys.
Microsoft is slowing down a little.
It's all the AI stuff.
Years ago, I changed. I completely got out of the Microsoft ecosystem, and I went to Chrome because it never has any of those issues. And then about a year ago, I was like, well, it seems to be working, and I came back over to what I guess is the dark side, and using the Windows machine again. And every once in a while, I get those crazy updates with no warning that it will take 45 minutes either.
Is it the machine or is it the Chris? We'll never know.
Is it between the monitor and the chair? Is that maybe where the issue sits? Maybe.
Might be.
Well, I know we're running a little bit. Yeah, it could be. I'm not above it. I'm not above saying that I could be the problem. Look, I think we can jump right in because we are. So Johnny, and I'll spare the bumper this morning. I know you've got a tight schedule, and we're super grateful for you to be here. Let me just ask you, for those who don't know you, we've known you for quite some time, but share a little bit about yourself in case it's the first time they're tuning in, right? Because you are a recruiter turned educator and sort of champion of knowledge and delivery. You want to kind of give a escalator pitch of who's Johnny Campbell?
Sure. I'm the guy in the green t-shirt. You might see at recruiting events. I'll start with that. I recruiter since I left university 27 years ago, and I got into post kind of social media explosion in 2008. Got into teaching folks how to use social media to recruit because they just weren't goddamn doing it right, and weren't using it well enough. And from there, accidentally became an educator. Built a software company to scale that education, which was SocialTalent. And now we make you better at hiring the people that make your organization better. And so big obsession on hiring excellence. How do you do this well and scale doing this well? And that's my passion.
It's cool. And you do it from right outside of Dublin, right?
Do it from a chair here, Gerry. Go
ahead, Gerry.
I guess I live in Dublin, Ireland, and travel a lot. As both you know, I've met both of you at different conferences around the States.
So I'll jump in because I think we got some crazy lag going
that's
on.
My
so
look,
the topic we're going to talk about is educating candidates, and which is from a recruiter standpoint, old heresy that we help a candidate at all try to find a role, right? I mean, that's some old school about sort of helping the recruiters, helping educate. This kind of twist here of like educating candidates up front. Can you kind of share a little bit about maybe sort of what inspired SocialTalent to work on tools that focus on training candidates, that pivot or that shift?
Yeah, let me tell you a story. So we originally were looking at developing more content for internal mobility, right? So a couple of years ago, as we all know, there was a big push around internal mobility. Still is. I hope, LinkedIn showed data that internal mobility is up in the last year rather than net new hiring. We started partnering with some super people, good friend Bev K and others around new content for internal mobility. And, I was building a product in terms of, the educational product without actually drinking my own medicine, essentially there, until one day I was looking to hire an internal role, looking for a role in the business. I was interviewing an internal candidate, a fantastic woman who's been with us many, many years. And I know she is super capable of the job, but in, fair process, I was giving her a similar interview that I would have given to an external candidate as I was looking at external candidates at the same time. And she just really didn't do well in an interview, like really bombed. And I was like, oh my God, this is such a surprise because I know how capable this person is. And I realized it's because she's with us 8 years that she's no good at interviewing, because she hasn't had to interview for 8 years. And she is disadvantaged against external candidates who maybe job hop every 2 years. They've nailed this process of convincing somebody they're very good at the job. Whereas this other candidate, my internal person, was just really good at the job, but really bad at convincing someone she's good at the job. And I realized it was this light bulb moment going, how many other people out there are failing at an interview because they're not good at interviewing, but they're super capable of doing the job. And so, I actually stopped, gave her the feedback and said, I don't think you're communicating this well. Let's go back. And actually she took some of the content that we had in the platform to prep herself, and then came back and redid the interview. I said, I'm going to give you a new chance because I know your capabilities. Let's go again. And she did an amazing job and was fantastic. And I went to one of my customers going, I had this lightning moment because he was talking to me about internal mobility. And I said, this is my story. This is what I did. And he said, that's fantastic. I agree with you. We have the same thing in this business. We have 30,000 employees and we have this same scale issues where our most loyal people are not good at getting jobs. He said, but here's the thing, Johnny, you can't just give your internal candidates access to that enablement because that's not equitable. That's not fair. What about the external talent who are coming? You've got to have everyone starting at the same level playing field. And I was like, you're right. I missed that point. I just thinking about internal candidates, but you know what? Why wouldn't we give everyone the best chance of getting through the interview? Not cheating, not, trying to convince us they have skills they don't, but just being able to properly communicate in a structured behavioral interview, what we want them to hear, which should ideally slim our funnels, right? It's going to mean that, 50% of candidates who weren't getting through, who could have got through, will now be there. So we have much more opportunity, and we're probably bringing in more folks who were not getting the opportunity, perhaps the folks that are more loyal in the jobs, people who don't have access to a recruiter giving them coaching from a staffing agency or something like that. Folks who just want to get on and want to convince someone that they can do the job, but aren't brilliant at doing that in 60 minutes on a Zoom or Teams call.
I think that's a wonderful story, and it is a light bulb moment. There's no question that there are differences between people in terms of their ability to take an interview and do really, really well because of their interview skills, not because they can actually execute on the job. And differentiating or at least figuring out how to get everybody up to almost the same platform, I think is incredible. I remember 10 years ago, Roche required all candidates to take interview training, but it was very primitive at that time. And I also remember some great examples from Google where they shared interviews they actually did, got permission from the candidates to share them, and said, these are the kinds of questions we're going to be asking. This is how we're going to be operating. So if you're not prepared to come and sit on the other side and engage us against these kinds of questions, you're going to have a difficult time in terms of competing for this position. So I love the idea of being able to provide candidates a consistent platform to address. It's great.
I think there's been, even since then though, Gerry, things have accelerated, right? So it being just a good idea a year ago was one thing, but today in a kind of AI powered world, I know you covered this in the podcast only recently with kind of some of the alleged candidate cheating. Let's just call it candidate use of AI for the moment, right?
Exactly.
We've got a lot of folks using AI, and you have a challenge. One of our big customers, Accenture, we're sharing recently with this Tom Sayer there, who runs Global Candidate Experience. They've had an increase in the volume of applications of 2 million applications in the last 12 months extra. And he said the big challenge is that they all look good, like they're at first glance from a resume screen perspective good candidates that they should consider, and their suspicion is that a majority of them are being AI generated. They're real people, but they're using AI tools because the evidence says candidates are doing this to basically customize their resume application per role, and then they're coming up and looking great. And when they dig into it, they might not be so good. So they're trying to put, like most people are, a new, call it, stage before recruiter screen that screens folks in or out, right? Preferably screens them in a way that actually assesses, do they have the skills? And lots of folks doing this. It's really popular in volume hiring, as we know, but coming into more professional hiring. But they know that that's going to reduce the funnel, which is the aim, but it may reduce it too much. So they start talking about what are they looking, how are they incentivize someone to do this? And that's where you see there's a lot of initiatives, including the provisioning of training to the candidate to try and incent them to come in to do this. Like Siemens, one of our customers, brought in a strengths assessment as part of their first screen, where they're assessing every candidate, professional hiring roles, engineering roles, on these 7 strengths. But what it does is they give the candidate back a detailed report on their personal strengths and how to develop them and what they're good at, what they're not good at. We know we're working with some of our customers to, particularly the consumer brand organizations, to give them interview training and give them training on career advice and career management as a supplement to that if they're rejected, to try and improve that candidate experience and give back. So either as a solution for the kind of, we need to introduce more stages of assessment, so therefore we need to give them something back, or just, let's say, more consumer brands going, these are all potential customers and we're rejecting 99% of them. How do we give them back and leave them with a good taste in their mouth? I think this kind of a product, giving them either decent assessments, more enablement to training, more career advice on scale, is the holy grail.
Yeah, what you're really talking about is not only upskilling the capabilities of recruiters to understand what you're doing and so that they can master it, but also finding ways to automate some of that so you're actually engaging a greater proportion of the people who express interest with something that's useful for them, but also helps you determine which of them really should we be going forward with, as opposed to ignoring the majority of them and kind of randomly picking those that look good for reasons that, we really don't know.
Exactly. Solving 2 problems, candidate experience and the assessment challenge that we have as well.
It's great.
Chris, I know Chris got a delay on our call today. So
delay? Is he stuck? Yeah. No, I see you.
He's there, but we got a few seconds delay in his feed coming in for questions, Chris. So feel free to jump in anytime, my friend.
I do think it's this top of the funnel issue. You were talking about the various clients and members who are getting way more expressions of interest than they ever did. I think that challenge is, we don't have enough people to be able to screen them effectively. And obviously, because the data all looks similar, because they're using AI, it's really harder and harder to suss out those that we really should be going forward with from a fairness point of view, unless we find a way to deal with the top of the funnel in a way that gives them an advantage. I like the idea that providing people with feedback is a huge added advantage, but also making them feel that they are competing for the position beyond simply expressing interest. I think that's the key. And if we can do that with an avatar that has the ability to probe a little bit more deeply, we're kind of getting close to that. But we're the next couple of years, I think we will be able to do that, and literally almost promise every person who expresses interest that we're going to collect data from them in a way that allows for them to compete for the job.
Yeah, and I think you've got a couple of challenges here. One is, I think, we're doing this in volume hiring, called stand-up roles, right? Roles where you stand up in your workplace. You've got McHire and you've got other examples of Sodexo and other kind of competing business, Compass Group. We're doing this a lot of fast food, FedEx, and actually the candidates are really happy with the completely automated process where you perhaps remove the resume. I did an interview yesterday with the head of TA for Joe and the Juice, the kind of coffee and juice and sandwich chain that's across the US and Europe. And they got rid of the CV last year, the resume. And they brought in this process where you have essentially AI driving 4 behavioral interview questions. Mm-hmm. And you have 200 to 400 words to answer each question. And it basically gives you feedback instantly as to your suitability or not. And then they can still, as an assessment, the recruiter can get a ranking and say, this candidate looks like they're more suited, not suited. Mm-hmm. The beginning of a process. And there's lots of those kind of things out there. In professional hiring, there isn't as much of this. Or it's, there's some elements in the top of the funnel. And the challenge is, I think, I use the analogy of going to a McDonald's restaurant for dinner versus going to a Michelin star restaurant. In a McDonald's restaurant, you want speed, you want efficiency, you want consistency, and a fully automated process is brilliant. You got these new kiosks the last couple of years. You go in and the menu is as you expect. You type in, you don't talk to anybody. Your food's quick. You sit down in a restaurant that looks like every other McDonald's restaurant. Uniqueness is a bug in the McDonald's restaurant experience. It's not a feature, but in a Michelin star restaurant, absolutely do not want to go up to a kiosk and type in what I want to eat and have it sent to me by a robot or anything like that. Uniqueness is the feature in a high-end restaurant. And to me, if I look at those two different experiences, there's still room for technology and innovation in the high-end restaurant. So, for example, I don't want to ring somebody and walk through on the phone my need. Hey, can I book a table for 4 for 8 p.m.? Or do you say 14 people for 7 p.m.? You're like, no, 4 people, 8 p.m. Can you not hear me? Horrible. I want to go into an app and pick my time. So in the top restaurant, I still want to use technology to book it. And then when I'm ready to leave and my bill comes, I hate waiting around 15 minutes for the server to come back with the machine or to take my card. It drives me bananas. So you still see in high-end restaurants and bars, you can scan a QR code when you get your check and you can walk out and it's paid for. Technology in a high-end situation that suits. So you can still have a very personalized experience with technology in different aspects of call it the funnel of eating or drinking in a restaurant. And I think the same applies when we're hiring. There will be situations where the candidate and the hiring company are completely happy with a perfectly automated, consistent experience, right? So that kind of volume hiring. But in professional hiring, which to me is more like a high-end restaurant, you want a personalized experience. And to give a better experience, what you want to do is automate the parts that should be automated. And that's where you kind of see this challenge for the kind of technology space around AI in terms of the assessment funnel, whether it's because over time, if not today already, AI can probably make a better hiring decision. But humans want agency, and they want both. The candidate wants to go, I never met anyone in the company. I'm not taking a job in a company I've never met people in. That's ridiculous. And then the hiring manager is thinking, I never met these people. Like in a retail situation, it's fine to go, you have three vacancies. We'll have 3 people for you on Monday morning. You go, brilliant, just give me their names. That's fine. Both you and the candidate don't care. But in a, high-end, technical, professional, high-end care role, you want the human experience. But again, there's parts of that process that everyone would prefer to be automated. Like scheduling is the obvious one that came along a few years ago. Nobody needs humans to schedule interviews. That's a joke. It's a nightmare. You definitely want that automated, right? Even maybe your application process, but or some of the assessment pieces. But you want to talk to somebody. You want to double down on that. So I think we're going to see companies who do a lot of professional hiring investing in how do you make it an even more unique experience. So giving training for the candidate on how to interview, giving them career guidance, giving them feedback on their strengths. These are all really interesting ways to add value, unique, personalized value to the candidate in the hiring process, whether you're hiring them or rejecting them. I think you'll see a lot more of that because we're making room for that. We're, by automating some of the other parts, it gives us the time, the energy, the budget to then enhance the parts that matter. Rejection, as you know, Gerry, because you've been banging this drum for more than a decade, if you reject well, it stands to your overall hiring experience. But most of us just go, well, how can I personally reject 80,000 or 2 million people a year? You, a human, can't, but AI can. Like Andy Hedworth, I think both of you met Andy Hedworth over in the UK over the years. He's now at HMRC, which is the tax authority in the UK, right? His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Andy went in there a few years ago, found himself in the public sector, not a public sector guy, right? Nothing wrong with the public sector, but he was very private sector, very innovative. And they want him to bring in innovative techniques. He introduced a new AI tool that cost $30 a month that his team built in a week using an off-the-shelf product that can screen every applicant. And there's about 60,000 applicants a year, not huge, but enough. And it can reject the bottom 60%. And it personally rejects every single person in that bottom of the funnel. By if you think about it, saying, there's our requirements list. Here's what you have in your resume, and here's where you don't fit. And so everyone gets the exact reason that they were rejected. That no recruiter is ever going to email those 36,000 people, but AI can do it instantly. And it's a good experience, right? And you have a right to then reapply if we miss something, et cetera, et cetera. So the scale there to enhance candidate experience that you get from automating the right parts of the process gives you the ability to improve that, leave a better taste in people's mouths, have a better process when they're going through it. That's where I think there's some really interesting stuff going on.
That's the analytics. I think that's going to be critical in terms of being able to look at those people who think they're ready and want to compete now for the job. I do think that we're going to have to be more strategic, however, in terms of being able to identify people who potentially can do this job next year. We have to have the ability to see the future a little bit, just a little bit. Might be 6 months, might be a year, but being able to engage prospects that we know may become qualified, but today they're still a year away from it. And our ability to accomplish that will handle some of this issue, in my opinion.
So it's funny. I was telling a
Especially
story recently.
DE&I that we seem to be rolling back a little bit.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast.
I know. Trust me. I just wrote something on that. I just think we really need to have a stronger discussion there.
So on the first part, Gerry, I was talking recently with a recruiter in Boston Consulting Group, and they were sharing their approach. A high-end consulting company, with very, very white glove hiring. They do that kind of long-term hiring with undergrads and others by literally wining and dining the undergrad and their families for a year or longer before they have the need for a hire. Real long relationship, right? And you kind of go, people might go, oh yeah, that's all very well when you're hiring senior end consultants in BCG. But I think things like that become possible when we're automating other parts of the process. You start going, can we start identifying people a year out? Can we start, in a scaled way, warming them, developing a relationship? Because let's be honest, when we're reactive, manually hiring 50,000 people a year, there's no way we can deal with anything but the needs in front of us, because we can barely deal with them. But if you can start to get economies of scale there, that's where you can probably put that effort into that more long tail.
And we're not talking about every single job. We're talking about roles that are core to the success of the future of the company. Yeah. So if we're looking at cybersecurity, or we're looking at, you start looking at what are some of the skills that are being developed out there that we know there's not enough of them today. They're pushing to try to get more of them tomorrow, but we should be building relationships with those people so that when tomorrow comes, they already know who we are. They already know that we want them, and they're in a better position to make a good decision to come to us.
So interesting. A friend of mine, Jose Cadlec, I don't know either of you met Jose. He's one of the trainers on our platform. He teaches some of the sourcing curriculum. He's based in Prague, in the Czech Republic, and himself and his business partner in Milan run a RPO business. A couple hundred people there. They do outsourced recruiting and sourcing for a lot of companies in the Czech Republic. And they run an online learning business that teaches you some of the Microsoft products. I was like, well, that's interesting, odd, but why do you run this business? It's a recruitment tool for Microsoft. I was like, why? And he goes, we provide free training on Microsoft products. And you come to the website and you sign in, you start doing your training, and the really good people, they're pipeline for Microsoft to hire. I was like, interesting. So this was like, thinking about like, how do you have that long tail engagement? It might not be as an obvious, hey, we want to hire you in a year, but maybe it's something that, hey, can I add value to you today? But actually what I'm doing in the background is I'm keeping an eye on you, keeping a relationship going. So we might hire you and I'm getting insights on you. But you know what? If you don't ever come to work for us, you get free training, free education. So things like that interest me.
If social talent were upskilling along those same kinds of lines, then you would have more access to those future recruiters that we're going to be needing versus those who are simply taking orders.
Very much so. Like we can see in our system across over 1 million recruiters who has the most knowledge in various high demand subject areas. Are they the best recruiters? I don't see that. I don't have data because I can't see their outputs. But I know from our customers' feedback is that it correlates. People who go deep on education tend to be higher performers in large groups when they look at this data. So yeah, we get that data already. We understand who the people are who invest the most in their education, certainly on our platform across those data points. But where I'm kind of interested in the future, how AI applies to a business like ours, is we launched a new product just last week, actually, where we have simulations in our system where we can simulate the activity you're meant to be good at. Because if you think about knowledge only becomes a skill when you've done it many times, you've applied it many times. Like I can tell you how to do an interview, and you can rewrite that and regurgitate it to me, but you're not skilled at interviewing until you've done a few or many of those things. And the challenging thing for a lot of us is that you have to practice in the real world, and you to mess it up with a whole bunch of candidates and hiring managers. So we built using generative AI a tool where you can go in and in voice, I can go, great, I'm hiring for this role. You dump your link in, and as a hiring manager or an interviewer, you can go, I want to interview a candidate for this role, simulate a candidate. We'll go, yep, we've got Sarah. Sarah's a candidate. Here's her resume that we just made up for your role that you're actually hiring for. You're going to ask her, tell us which of the 3 skills you're looking for you want to focus on. This. Brilliant. You're going to actually ask her behavioral interview questions now to try and assess for those 3 skills based on what you just learned in the course you completed. Go. And you'll simulate an interview. And it will then stop at the end and go, brilliant, Chris, here's your feedback. Here's what you did really well. Okay, you did this stuff that we taught you. This stuff you didn't do so well. And the key thing is the candidate that we simulate deliberately is not brilliant. They're not a great communicator. They don't have amazing skills. So they're going to require the interviewer to really dig and probe. Because obviously this is too easy if the candidate's fantastic. The interviewer does nothing. So we try and deliberately make it difficult. So what we're able to then do is really understand, can you interview? Not do you know about interviewing, but can you interview? So you apply that to any scenario. Like, for example, we launched this for our good friend, Glenn Cathy's sourcing training. He has a classic course, new course on Boolean searching. But actually, it will say, go write a Boolean search string, go change it, and we'll give you feedback on your Boolean search strings, what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, how to fix it, and we'll tell you if you're doing them well. That's something that we could never scale before AI. But we can literally give 1 million people personalized feedback on how they're applying their learning, all at the same time in real time. That's the power of learning in 2025, is that everyone can get a coach and give you personal feedback.
As you were talking, the one simulation I would want, because I think it's missing in the quality of what I see from recruiters at a lot of different levels. And that is their ability to have a conversation with a hiring manager as an equal. And you give me that kind of simulation that tests my capabilities of bringing to that meeting, bringing to that conversation, the kind of discussion that challenges me, because the hiring manager may or may not know, what I can do, what the market is doing, and the whatever. And so I want to be able to be tested against all the challenges the hiring manager can throw at me, and come away with a clear view of what I'm going to be able to supply to that candidate, to that manager, based upon us being equals, if you will. And I think that would be powerful.
You'll be glad to know, Gerry, we launched 116 simulations last week, and included in that are many hiring manager simulations where we have a not very nice hiring manager who is pushing back on the recruiter, dismissive of them, doesn't want to spend much time with them. And your challenge is to, one of the challenges is to get to the point where the hiring manager sees you as an equal, to give value, to share insights based on the curriculum.
That's the one that I want to go play with. I got to tell you, other things I can either automate, or we can coach, or, granted, you can master them. But that one is going to be the key issue, I think, for the skills we need. And the folks that can't do that should be finding something else to do with their lives.
Yeah, and you're right. This is what's exciting for me. And you can go into ChatGPT today and say, "Hey, simulate being a hiring manager. I'm a recruiter. Let's have a conversation." And you do a role play. But what we found is that it'll be a really nice hiring manager who's really cooperative, who's fantastic, and the best hiring manager you ever worked with. You
Right.
learn nothing, right? You need to have the scars of doing this to know what a bad hiring manager or a difficult one is like,
It's
and
well, it's
program
like
it that way.
it's like a pilot. Every once in a while they say the pilot's got to go over to the simulation machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're challenged for stuff that they would normally almost never see. But those are the critical ones that really save lives in the long run. And I would love that set of simulations, each one being a slightly different hiring manager with a different kind of challenge relative to what we need to supply. So yeah, I'm excited by that. That's great.
And tell you, I'll give you a future of where we might go with this, Gerry, is what if you had this assistant also listening in on every hiring manager conversation on all your interviews, and it could tell you personalized, not just from the simulations, but from your actual day-to-day work, what you're doing, what you're not doing well, what to do next.
In real time.
Well,
That's
see,
happening now.
real time is what you can do. But here's the thing I learned, right? You can give I've seen great tools that, for example, can coach you how to conduct an interview in real time. But the challenge is this. If you have a tool that says, "Hey, Gerry, here's the exact questions to ask this candidate, Chris, to understand his skills." That's brilliant. I can get that today. That's phenomenal. But Chris is a human being. Chris comes on the call and all of a sudden he's scatty. He's all over the place. He starts jumping around topics, or he just talks too much. You're going, how do I get him to stop talking? Because I have got 8 questions I got to ask him, and then I'm running out of time. And then you get to the end of the interview and you've asked him 2, and you're like, what went wrong? I had the perfect list. AI told me what to say, but how do you interrupt Chris effectively? How do you redirect Chris? These are human skills that you still need. And this is the thing about the role of the human in here, is that you still need a human in there, because humans, if you're interviewing a human, you need a human to get in there, and you still need to be taught these particular skills. Having a list of things to say is not enough. You need to be coached. You need to practice. You need this deliberately, because there's, you both know this. There's a way to stop someone like me from fucking talking on a podcast, and you need to shut people down sometimes.
The mastery of that is certainly very nuanced. But I got to tell you, I think we're going to be able to simulate a lot of that at the top of the funnel. 80, if we can get 80% of it, we can do a pretty good job with all of the people who express interest. Enough so that when you get to the human, you only need a few humans, and they will have the mastery, either through the simulations or what have you. And that's what we need to upskill from that perspective. There's going to be fewer recruiters doing interviewing, but they'll 100%. Be doing it better.
Yeah. You'll still need an expert, because there'll be so many hiring managers who are below average. They'll need support from a recruiter. But if you're an above average hiring manager, you're probably good to go, self-serve. You just get the 4 candidates you need to meet near the bottom of the funnel.
Well, then there's a simulation for the hiring manager, for God's sake, that if they can't meet it, they should not be hiring. They should simply be learning how to manage.
100%. How do you scale that to 20,000 hiring managers to make sure that they're capable of doing it? That's another challenge we've got to solve, Gerry.
Well, we need to step up to that, because if they can't meet the baseline criterion for doing it, they do more damage to us in the long run, in terms of bringing good people on who are motivated to work for that hiring manager. So
I think
fewer hiring managers who can't do that.
In a 2015 world, it's impossible to know. Like, hiring managers are doing interviews, it's a black box. We've no idea if they're any good. Maybe candidate NPS scores, maybe. But in 2025, you have AI sitting in on those interviews virtually and saying, Chris is not good enough, don't let him interview.
That is a cool point to make in a variety of different ways, because very few companies will claim that they audit anything that the managers do, even if they've trained them. And we know that most of those managers default back to some of their bad habits. And so fundamentally, if you always know that you're going to be audited by AI as the hiring manager, and that there's a report that comes out and it's going to have a little more transparency perhaps than just you, I think we're going to be in a better position. I would be using AI for that right now.
So on that, let me leave you and finish on this point, Gerry, right? We've been obsessed for decades with quality of hire. I think what we can do this year is quality of hiring, because that's what you're talking about, that auditable process. Do we have a strong quality of hiring? Consistent hiring process, consistent interviewing, consistent assessment and judgment. That's what we want to try and measure.
And I'll leave you with this point. I think if we do quality of hiring, we will be able to have a better definition for quality of hire.
100%. 100%.
Cool.
Jens, it's been a pleasure.
It's been good.
Thanks for listening to the CXR channel. Please subscribe to CXR on your favorite podcast resource and leave us a review while you're at it. Learn more about CXR at our website, cxr.works, facebook.com and twitter.com/careercrossroads, and on Instagram @careerxroads. We'll catch you next time.